Please welcome the publisher of RAIN, the radio and internet newsletter, Kurt Hansen.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you all back from lunch. We have a lot to talk about today. There's lots of new distribution platforms, a couple of which, as the program guide says, might be threats to legacy broadcasters, and a lot of them, they're probably opportunities. It's a great panel, and I thought I'd let them introduce themselves to you. So let's do that, starting with Julie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Adam. I'm the head of Rogers Radio.
I guess I get my own.
Mark wasn't ready.
Thank you, Zach.
20 seconds.
I'm with Zach. Zach's going to do most of the talking today, right, Zach?
Maybe.
And my name is Mark MacArthur. I am the executive producer for music programming for CBC Music in Canada.
I'm Rob Farina, and I just found the on switch of this microphone. I'm head of iHeartRadio Canada.
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah. My name is Zach Sang. I do a nationally syndicated radio show. We're on 75 radio stations across the country. I started in radio when I was 14 years old, and I started by creating the second largest teen radio station from my bedroom, and it was all digital at first, and now we do FM. So, yeah. I'm from America. Hi.
We should say that the show is Zach Sang and the gang.
Zach Sang show now, but now you're my gang.
We're the gang.
Yeah, honored to have this elite gang, by the way. I mean, I'm rolling deep.
You're going down, Zach. There go the ratings.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe in you. I think there's the big character profile with you, Julie.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna work.
Okay, I'm going to take control. The big news item since our last CMW is probably the launch of Radio Player and iHeartRadio Canada. So I thought we'd start with that. And Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about Radio Player?
Sure. I think the motto of Radio Player is to agree on technology and compete on content, and I like that phrase. It came from the UK. Radio Player is, an app that was developed in the UK. The UK broadcasters wanted to come together, so they, it was the public broadcasters, the BBC, joining the commercial radio companies to come together when streaming was starting to take off. And they built a web player that all stations were able to use so that the listener experience was easier. Somebody wanting to listen to a station, it's kind of like a dashboard in your car where you pick the station you want to listen to. You're not changing technology every time you do that. So that's how Radio Player started in the UK. Canada is the 7th or 8th country to jump on board. And the philosophy really is to compete on content. So agree on technology, which is the app, and then compete on our great brands.
So this is available as an app for iOS and Android devices, other things like smart TVs or CarPlay?
Yeah, CarPlay, Android Auto. It's available in different countries on different things. So we're working on smart TV and speaker devices like Sonos.
Okay, great. And Rob, why don't you tell us about iHeart?
Great. So we launched iHeartRadio here in Canada in October of 2016. iHeartRadio is really a music and entertainment brand. While there are a few similarities to, Radio Player, the iHeartRadio model is a little bit different. There's kind of two key things with iHeartRadio. First of all is ubiquity of the signal in being able to reach the consumer on the platform of their choice. So the iHeartRadio brand that's been in existence for about 7 years and now has over 100 million registered users in the US has over 120 platform integrations, everything from Subaru, Ford Sync, Smart TV, Sonos, Bose. So in bringing the brand up to Canada, one of the key reasons was the ability for radio stations, not just Bell, but radio overall, to be able to reach consumers on multiple platforms. The second key piece of iHeartRadio is IP. We as an industry sometimes suffered just by the deluge of new technology in having our medium be perceived as unsexy. And I think that was a key thing that really drove iHeartRadio to build new verticals around what radio does and change how people think about radio. So While events is the most kind of public face of iHeartRadio, and we started that in Canada. We launched our first Jingle Ball in late 2016. We've got 5 arena events rolling out the country this year and a bunch of smaller events. We also are able to leverage all the content that comes out of the U.S. to do on demand. So the content play really allows us to, as a business, dip into fields we weren't in before. So now we're transacting on sponsorships around events, activations, working at high levels with brands to create branded content verticals around music. We go into the marketplace and say, if you're a brand that wants to engage your audience with a music message, we're the people you need to be talking to, and we build creatives around that. And through all that, we build an ecosystem which ultimately drives engagement onto radio. So, as I said, we launched in October. Next month, we're hitting the 1 million download mark. It's a monstrous figure. It's one of the fastest downloaded apps in history in Canada. And iHeartRadio 2.0 is going to be out in the summer. 2.0, we're going to have other Canadian broadcasters, both commercial, community, and public, coming onto the platform as well. We're launching a podcast vertical and launching more interactive features around radio, which will quickly be followed up by iHeartRadio Plus and iHeartRadio All Access, which were launched in America in January, and we're looking forward to bringing those products to Canada, and again, increasing, the relationship and what radio means to our consumers and building more touch points for engagement.
Okay, now one thing I think I want to jump back to Radio Player for a moment. iHeart is primarily a Bell Media license, has licensed it from the former Clear Channel in the U.S., iHeartMedia.
Correct.
And Radio Player is a different organization. You want to tell us about that, Julie?
Sure, it's a not-for-profit in Canada, meaning it's not one company that owns it. So it's a consortium. There are 7 shareholders, which are all broadcasters in Canada. And then we have about 35 partners that are licensees, and then some individual stations that license as well.
Okay, so how many stations total are available in Radio Player at the moment?
Right at the moment, there's over 400, with about another 100 about to join.
Okay, and the comparable number for
right now, it's only the Bell radio stations on Radio Player, plus about 150 digital channels, curated music streams. This summer, there'll be an additional 300 stations coming on board.
Okay. And now, Mark, let's talk about CBC for a moment. You are one of the 7 principals in Radio Player?
Radio Player, yeah. So we are in the Radio Player space. We also have our own versions as well that we've made in-house. CBC has its own radio app, which you can listen to Radio 2 or Radio 1 whenever you want. And CBC Music has also actually launched a new app last year, which gives access to our Radio 2 stream, which is basically digital radio of Radio 2. And because it's all genre sort of programming, we also have 70 web radio stations that are, or web radio channels, which are available on the same app.
But that's on your app, not on...
That is on an in-house, in-created app. So yeah.
The name of the app being?
CBC Music. It's just free download, and there you go.
Okay. What's the policy at Rogers and at Bell about single station apps? Are those a thing of the past, or are you supporting those as well?
Well, we're not doing it at Bell because, there's a big focus on, branding iHeartRadio, which doesn't take away from the brand of the individual radio stations. But the way we view iHeart is iHeart should be the Trojan horse that is only as powerful as all the stations that populate it. And iHeart's got to be the, got to drive engagement onto the radio stations. That's the purpose for iHeart. So we've moved away from single station apps, but there are some kind of, anomalies there. Like, for example, TSN is a completely different brand. It has a much bigger content offering, and within the parameters of what we do on the iHeartRadio app, which is, you know, purely a streaming product, it doesn't really benefit a brand like TSN or maybe Sportsnet having it, you know, not have its own app, while it could still participate, you know, on the radio player or the iHeartRadio platform.
Okay, and Julie?
At Rogers, each of our stations has a single station app.
Okay, so you can get that station either of two ways. You can go to
One of two ways, that's right.
Okay, Zach, your show is available on the U.S. version of iHeart.
Yes.
Through the
local stations. So Cumulus and Westwood One, we don't have an exclusive digital platform, so we do use iHeartRadio. From my show, we leverage digital in a different way. Yeah, obviously through streaming, but we use it for content too, and additional content. Like one of our most popular outlets is YouTube. We have a very popular, you know, YouTube channel that's populated with all of our celebrity interviews. That translates over into a podcast. You know, it's different. You know, we use digital differently for Snapchat, Facebook, obviously for social. But the one thing that I genuinely believe that the U.S. is missing, right, is an iPlayer app, right? We need this as an industry because people want radio. Whether you're old, young, and speaking on behalf of Generation Z and the young side of millennials, people want radio. The amount of young kids that call me every night and hang out with us every night and tune us in their local radio station in Little Rock, Arkansas while they're having a slumber party is insane. They want radio, but radio needs to be where the people are. And if we're not on their phone, if we're not integrated into Alexa and into Sonos and into televisions, then, I mean, what are we doing, right? People want what we have to offer, but we need to be where they are. That's the big point.
Okay. Pardon my naivete on this, but TuneIn is on a global level a fairly well-trafficked product. Are you all familiar?
Yep.
I assume with that. Is that being supported in Canada? Are your stations all on that?
Well, I think TuneIn operates in Canada like it operates in the U.S., which we don't really have a relationship with TuneIn.
You could block them if you want.
Yeah, you could. We could block them if we wanted to, but you know, it's a business that, you know, there's two sides to it. First of all, they take our content. We're not compensated for it. They don't ask for permission. But on the other side, you know, broadcasters, we often have the discussion: do you want to be the person that yanks off TuneIn only to find out that one of your heavy users that had a PPM used TuneIn as the appliance of choice or, you know, gateway of choice to get your signal? So. You know, I think while we'd love to control our content, you know, TuneIn isn't there. There's about 50, you know, radio aggregators in the App Store in Canada today, and more in the U.S. So, so I don't know how big of a problem TuneIn is for us, and quite frankly, they may be helping us, you know, from a rating standpoint. But it's a roll of the dice that I think everybody is skittish about taking. But at some point, you know, the radio, I'm sure this is something that the Radio Council, now that, you know, there's an iHeartRadio in the marketplace and a Radio Player Canada in the marketplace, you know, this is something that as an industry we should really talk about and talk about how we're going to use it. Because, you know, in no other business can you take somebody's content and just repurpose it without any ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we need to get to. And as an industry, I think one of the things we need to do a better job of, and I think we've made really good strides in this direction, but is technology. And it would be very simple for the Canadian industry to say, okay, we're not going to put our streams on anything but iHeart or Radio Player. If we wanted to go that route, I think we could make that decision pretty easily and make that happen, whether that's the way we want to go right now or not. Yeah. But it feels a whole lot better to know that you're controlling your own destiny and somebody else isn't getting, you know, as Rob said, your content for free.
Okay. And you're supporting it, Mark?
Yeah, actually we're on TuneIn, and I don't actually see a problem with it right now. I mean, barring what you're saying, it's strange that somebody rebroadcasts your content. But we're still in an age of transition. I think right now, as many people as we can get to still find that radio online is as good as over the air, it's great. It's a matter of consumer behavior. And I still think that apps, we're in a transition stage away from them as well. We're moving to a bot culture and a, you know, voice command assistant. So, yeah.
We'll get to that in just a sec. I mean, maybe next. I want to just circle back to Zach and ask, do you know what percentage of your audience is listening, or have a feel just based on listeners? What percentage is listening to an AM/FM station versus a stream of an AM/FM station?
A majority of our listeners listen on FM, but we have a high turnaround of FM to digital transition, meaning getting somebody to YouTube or getting someone to Instagram or Snapchat or anything like that. The issue that we have, right, is we don't, you know, just like you're mentioning TuneIn, right? Do you promote that you can hear your station on TuneIn? Is that in your imaging? Or is it just, because you're right, we're in a transition period, so people use different apps for different purposes. So in a TuneIn world, you're not telling people to check me out on TuneIn. Whoever just happens to be on TuneIn finds your station and that's how they're listening, and because you don't want to lose any listeners, you keep it, right? So with us, like, we're on iHeart, but I'm not mentioning in every break that you could be streaming my show on iHeart. So we have a lot to learn from the United States, from Canada, right? What you guys have done and what the UK has done has set the groundwork for a lot of countries really to follow, because I genuinely believe that it is the future. Platforms need to be in sync, right? Like, in my opinion, like, if somebody owns the platform, that's kind of like a monopoly almost, right? Like, you're owning the vessel at which everybody needs to get to the people. You know, you don't even let content be the defining factor at that moment. You know, it's based on the technology that you own. It's like saying somebody owns every television in the house or like just in the country. It doesn't work, you know? If that makes any sense.
Yes. Let's talk hardware things for a couple of minutes. Two closely related topics are smart speakers like Sonos and Bose, and voice control devices like Amazon's Echo device powered by Alexa and Google Home. They kind of overlap in that the voice control devices have speakers as well and can be just not the fidelity of a Sonos, which has the same functionality but not the voice control. Let's start with smart speakers. Are things like Sonos and Bose, are those becoming important to you? Because when you have those, this is a long question, sorry. When you have that, Sonos, for example, as your stereo system, you don't have an AM/FM receiver connected anymore. All you can listen to are through the app, things that stream. So how does that affect legacy broadcasters, pro or con?
Well, iHeartRadio's already got those relationships with the Sonos and Bose platforms and Amazon and Alexa, so they're not live in Canada. Those are part of the 2.0 rollout this summer, you know. And you know, quite frankly, I have Sonos in my house, and I love Sonos, but I hate the fact that I'm not able to get, you know, radio on the Sonos. I hate that. And I'm pretty sure Julie feels the same, that you can't stand when there's, you know, a product out in the marketplace where you can't get your, you know, the brands that we work so hard on, you know, streaming through them. So I see them as important, even though from a number, you know, from percentage, you know, the tuning is small. But I don't think we could look at that and say, well, it's such a small part that it's not worth us doing, because there's a lot of people that thought the streaming tuning was small, or how are we going to monetize streaming? And the reality is, in the new world, you know, if it's where people are going, you go there, you play in the playground, and in the process, you figure out how you're going to monetize it.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, well, I think it's important. I mean, I don't think they're making a lot of, you know, old-fashioned radios, if you will, and speaker systems seem to be, you know, the way of the future. That's just, you know, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but that's just technology, and I believe we will sort that out. I think iHeart will be on all those platforms, and Radio Player is going to be on those platforms, and at some point, you know, the Googles and the Sonos of the world are going to open it up so that a single station app can, you know, hit a button and send it to your Sonos system or whatever. I mean, that's the way it's going to go. If that's what if consumers want to listen to you and there's demand, we'll figure out the technology to make that happen. But certainly from my point of view, I think that's where the future is.
Okay. You don't yet have the Alexa products, the Echo family available here, correct? Coming soon?
We do. Yes.
Okay. You do have Google Home, because I went on to Amazon.ca and tried to buy an Echo, and the product that came up was Google Home, right. Ironically.
Sonos is the leader in Canada right now in the smart speaker space. Okay. I know those are different, but Sonos is the leader right now. Okay,
and they're doing some nice advertising. I saw full-page ads in the entertainment newspaper.
Spending a lot in advertising right now.
More so than in the U.S.
I think this, must be a bit of their turf that they're trying to defend before these next guys come in, right?
Yes. Google Home. Anybody has any of you or anyone out there tried it yet? The interesting thing about it, I think, is that it's a perfectly good replacement for a clock radio, where you might 10 or 20 years ago have seen a nightstand with a clock radio, or on top of the refrigerator in your kitchen, a kitchen radio, or these work great, and they're multifunctional. It's radio and a lot of other stuff. Though it seems like it's a different model because the number of discovery is different. You can't tune up and down a dial anymore.
Right.
Seems like there's different ways you have to adapt to them.
You need to know the name of what you want to listen to, right? You need to say, Google, play me Kiss 102.5, right? Like, you need to tell exactly what you want.
You're not going to tune down the dial and find Zach saying you have to ask for something.
Yeah, and by the way, let's just state an obvious fact right now. Diary ratings help with exactly this, right? You look at the UK, they make stars out of their personalities. You want to know why? Because when diary sheets go to them and they have to write down who they listen to, that name of that personality is all that matters. And that's going to help them moving forward because they brand the content. They brand the content creators. Yeah, the station exists, but it's more, right? Like, PPM is, you don't need to know the name of the station you listen to. It's whatever it's on. And I'm new to the Canadian radio scene, so I'm speaking on behalf of America when it comes to PPM. But, now more than ever, you got to be branding everybody that's on your station and making sure the station name is at the forefront, because it goes back to the diary system. Google Home, Kiss 102.5. You got to know everything.
Look, we can, I don't think technology is our problem, right? I mean, we can, we have big companies in this Canadian marketplace that will write checks to develop technology if they need to adapt our apps, to do what we need to do to stay on the air, and it's a profitable business. Our challenge is making sure that when people say, I want to listen to X, that they actually want to listen to something, that we have powerful brands, that we have great personalities like Zach. That's really what this all comes down to. I think if we can figure out how to have amazing products, getting them into people's homes, I don't think is going to be the issue. In fact, I think we have more of an opportunity than we've ever had. Every friggin' cell phone is a radio right now. Mm-hmm. Every smartphone, every television, every speaker system. Back in the day, you had to go out and buy a desktop radio. Now, you get one with everything you own. So let's just make great radio, and the rest of it should sort itself out.
I want to just agree with what Julie's saying in terms of, we spend a tremendous amount of time laying the pipe and setting the highways up, but the truth is we still got to get back to going, you know what, we need to develop talent, we have a real problem in our industry in developing the next wave of talent. We could be on every platform, imaginable, but if we're not creating compelling formats and compelling personalities and exciting promotions and engaging our listeners, our consumers, then it doesn't really matter. So, while I think we all love to have platform discussions, really what we are is, we love to engage consumers through radio, and we believe that kind of getting the technology in place to reach our listeners goes that much closer to have us focus on what we really should be doing, which is that minute-by-minute engagement.
Now, that said, new technology and platforms allow new types of content. Yeah. And I think CBC Music is a good example of that. Maybe we haven't really covered that much. Want to give us a minute or two more on that?
In what sort of sense are you looking for the content that we're doing?
By having using internet delivery for that product, you can offer 60, 70 different niche radio stations?
Certainly. So what we have is I'll talk a little bit about Radio 2 to start, which is we're multi-genre, and it's a very strange sort of single station out there, and the fact that throughout the course of the day you'll go from pop music, adult alternative, you'll go through jazz, you'll go through a lot of classical programming. It's a very unique brand in the fact that it's very trusted by Canadians, but when you come to it, you may not want to listen to all the genres. What we've done by definitely placing the radio next to our genre streams is it's a continuation of the listening experience that you were having. So if you came in and you were listening to our classical program in the morning, Tempo, and you were having a great time, and then all of a sudden it shifts to the next program, and then we get into pop programming, you're not enjoying that, if you are versed in it, you have our app, you can actually then join up with a 24/7 web genre stream of classical music that's actually curated by the same people that do the program. So in that way, we're just sort of offering this continuous listening experience for anyone. So we're trying to use technology in that way to extend the brand.
That's analogous to Howard Stern being available 24/7 on Sirius. Taking a single program, someday there'll be a Zach 101 that'll be.
But I think also, like, by the way, like, that's a big thing for everybody, right? Is making sure that your brand lives 24/7. This is every show and every personality. It's so much more than just your shift or your show and the 5 hours you spend on a radio station. And digital opens us up for that, right? Like, not all content that needs to put out there is solely audio. Video is a huge part of this. In some cases, we've had more viral interviews, like interviews reach tens of millions of people that we would never have hit on radio, but the brands are connected. You know, so I think, you know, going back to content being priority, yeah, content will always be priority. And it's about how you use digital to expand your natural show or your natural shift, and you make it into something more. And speaking on behalf of, like, again, Generation Z and the young side of millennials, I mean, they want 24/7. They want a personality that they're connected to. They want somebody they can follow. They want a pulse. They want something real on the other end. Genuine and authenticity is key now more than ever.
Yeah, and really owning that content. I mean, we're noticing that our listeners definitely want to sort of do deep dives into the content as well. So, you know, a lot of what CBC does is we try and promote new talent and new and emerging artists. So we bring them in, we actually do video content series with them. We'll get them to play their album live. We, you know, do lots of articles about, like, what's the top 30 under 30 that are coming up. There's lots of editorial that we do. So we're trying to make it an enriched content experience with almost everything we do digitally.
And deep dives are a big thing, right? And with digital, like, everybody binges stuff, right? When you get into a hole, you get into a hole. When it's late at night and your computer's in front of you and you like something, you're going for it. The average viewer on our YouTube channel views 3 of our interviews on average. The average time per interview is 30 minutes.
Wow.
Wow.
Hello?
That's incredible.
Yeah, but it's also young people, right? So it's that 16-year-old who loves Ariana, who also loves Jason Derulo, who's going to go watch the Selena Gomez interview, and they're invested. So yeah, digital is a huge thing, audio-wise, video-wise, content in general.
Wow. Another form of engaging content in the U.S. is personalizable radio, best exemplified by Pandora, which has, we saw this morning in Larry Rosen's study, they have a 32% cum rating. I think we've seen in other Rosen studies, it's like the size, equivalent of a 10 or 12 share radio station in every market. Their market capitalization is bigger, is at 2.5 billion, is bigger than all American publicly owned radio companies put together. That seems like a great opportunity that any of you could chase. And maybe, you know, are you looking at that, or is that what CBC Music is? You have added a skip button, correct?
We have. So we launched about 5 years ago with linear streams, which were just curated streams that were forever playing. We have added in the last year the ability to skip tracks, so it's definitely semi-interactive music. We're actually taking the data from the skips and we're hoping to you know, modify our stations accordingly, which is a lot what Pandora does as well, and other services.
So in a sense, you're kind of going after that from the public radio angle.
Yes, so it's both. I mean, we notice that there's a huge amount of people out there, I think it's about 44%, that are still looking for the lean back experience. So they're looking for good curation as much as anything else. They're looking for radio, you know, traditional AM, FM radio, for a lean back content that's well curated, gives good context to it. So we actually have the historical archives, or we have hosts that are, you know, brilliant hosts that can actually bring something more to the music. And also something that sort of spreads a sense of community. I mean, CBC hopefully is very good with that. I know both of you are as well, which is local radio is great. For us, it's Canadian radio, but it's a sense of place and time and where we are. And that's where we're looking to be and to stay.
Okay. Is there in iHeart in the U.S., there are custom stations you can build through typing in an artist name?
We're rolling that out here as well. They're called Artist Radio, but it's exactly the same premise as Pandora, where you type in an artist name and a playlist is generated. I don't know if I'd call that personalized radio, but maybe I'd market it that way.
Okay. Julie, is Rogers or any are
We do it through partnerships, actually. So, you know, Rogers Radio is not in that playlist space, but we have deep partnerships with Spotify and with Stingray. So the bigger Rogers is doing it more through partnerships.
Okay, gotcha.
I think Spotify is going to be the clear leader in that space over Pandora.
We should probably talk about that for a minute,
Right?
and those opportunities.
And I think, you know, that's the question. I mean, the bigger question is what, you know, we didn't, as a media company, we didn't get into the, you know, record store business back in the day, right? We didn't open up HMV stores, which means that there are parallel paths. So, you know, Spotify can have a viable business and be, you know, very successful in Canada, and it doesn't mean that radio has to go out of business because of it. I think it comes down to what your strategy is. If you're in the, you know, in the music strategy, or the, you know, if music is a big part of your strategy and you want to get into that, you know, streaming space, I think that's a different business than, you know, day-to-day terrestrial local radio.
Spotify is in the content business, right? They're a streaming business. They don't supply content with the music that they offer up to, you know, consumers as of this moment. So I think two distinct differences. You're right, spot on.
Yeah, I agree with that, Zach. I think, you know, we add an interesting component because we're able to leverage tremendous audience. We're able to drive culture. Right. We're able to drive a dialogue and you know, and a sense of community. There's these factors that radio, you know, has that I think Spotify would kill to have. Does it mean we should do what Spotify's doing? Absolutely not. I think we should do what we do even better, and we should leverage the platforms we have now at our disposal to be able to, you know, really work that. So I'm excited right now about radio and audio entertainment. I'm excited that people are talking about podcasts a lot, you know. It was like, you know, you know, I know Julie was really early adopter at Rogers, and Chum was as well in doing podcasts, and it was pushing a boulder up a hill, and slowly but surely an audience developed. You know, I think of like I think of the excitement that's being built around, you know, things like Serial and Where's Richard Simmons, and you know, these are people that are not using, you know, now using podcasts to augment the time, you know, listening to audio entertainment, and as an industry that develops, you know, great communicators, I think we're well poised to really be looking at these new ways to enhance our brands and drive more minutes of engagement with consumers.
What are the most successful podcasts for your individual companies?
Actually, I want to give props to CBC, because when you look at the, you know, the top charts for podcasts, CBC has done an amazing job in that space. And I think in the overall digital space, period, in Canada, CBC's been a real leader. For Rogers, a lot of it is sports. We're heavy into sports, and our sports podcasts perform the best for us right now.
Okay.
And at Bell, really what's driving, similar to Julie's answer, it's TSN. We have a bunch of really marquee personalities at TSN, and they're driving the majority of podcast engagements.
And Mark?
Well, thanks for the shout out for CBCs. I mean, our talk radio podcasts are quite tremendous. They're doing tremendously well. We have one called Someone Knows Something that came out last year. And it's just getting overwhelming response from Canadians right now. But also we have news and lots of others. CBC's been in the podcasting game for over 10 years, though. We started off with the music ones, and now we're very much heavily into the talk content.
Is talk radio, I assume, on AM, FM radio, pretty much a 50-plus, maybe except some CBC stuff, a 50-plus audience, and are you finding a younger audience for podcasts? I think that kind of came up this morning.
We do all news is one of Rogers' key pillars in radio, and it's not 50-plus.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's not, you know, 1834 necessarily, but 35, 49, 35, 54. It's, you know, it's still going strong.
I may be biased thinking of America's political talk format, which, thank God, you have less. of up here.
And really,
what's been going on in America?
that's a factor that doesn't exist here in Canada, like that kind of far right,
Crazy?
firebrand, crazy, that kind of, that is a tactic to get ratings.
You're telling me you're not a performance artist trying to swing elections?
By the way, you think I'm using this to play Pokemon Go, but actually, it's my notes, but actually just found Bill O'Reilly out.
Woo!
Hot news of the
Sorry.
moment. So, I'm sorry, so I lost my train of thought. So thank God this.
This just in.
Younger audience on talk radio and the ability to, I want to talk about just the ability it's a form of talk radio where people can hear more shows of more types of shows on their schedule.
Well, I tell you the other thing too is we are a very fast-moving society. Everything's moving at us really quick. Podcasts to me are a juxtaposition in that world where you could actually breathe and hear, a conversation and not something that's rushed through because you have to make it to the post.
It's beautiful.
Right.
It really is beautiful.
It's almost like when people talk about, why don't people write letters anymore and the art of letter writing. I almost find like podcasts is like the art of communicating with words now to combat the society that we've moved into where we're communicating with each other through emojis and
You go.
No, you go, Zach.
eggplants.
And just to go full circle with what you said, right? Spoken word and letting a conversation breathe and have room. Young kids will watch that. I just threw out my YouTube stat, right? Yeah. That's what my YouTube channel is, video podcast. That's all we do, right? And kids will sit for hours and binge our interviews. If the content is worth it, they will stay, right? 12-minute turnover times don't need to happen if you program to them, right? We program to fast turnover. We don't program to like hour-long listening.
That was going to be my exact point. If you have kids in the house, and I have a couple of them, people that say that, people under the age of 25 don't have attention spans. I mean, my kids are completely absorbed and listening. My 13-year-old listens to podcasts about shoes. He likes shoes. That's what he's obsessed with, and, 30 minutes at a time.
Is he a sneakerhead?
I think so.
That's what they call it.
Is that a bad thing?
No, that's a good thing. That's cool.
That's what they're called.
Yeah.
It's an expensive habit, so get ready, but it's cool.
Clearly, I'm not.
We're going to do questions, hopefully 10 minutes of time saved for questions, so that'll begin in just a couple of minutes. Or did I hear something? I would say we'll go to questions in 2 minutes. I want to cover, when I was on a panel here 5 years ago talking about the real impediment toward Canadians being able to listen to streaming was the high cost of mobile data plans. That if you had the wrong plan, you were paying $7 an hour to listen to the radio. And it seemed at the time like it was killing the potential of people being able to move to IP delivery if they wanted their radio that way. Is that getting better up here? Are you tending toward moving toward unlimited or cheap data plans?
I think the mobile plans are priced just perfectly.
I forgot.
I don't think I think it's okay, right? I mean, I think audio's okay. I think it's video that's tough.
I think audio
okay.
takes up so little bandwidth that, we're not really hearing this as an issue. I think maybe the bigger issue in Canada, which is easier now than it used to be, is actually if you want to be able to do on-demand content. So if you have an artist come into your radio station and perform live and you want to post that, it's now a little easier to negotiate the rights to be able to do that. And Canada historically was a difficult territory. That's why there's so few streaming platforms operating in Canada. Pandora's not here, never was.
And yet we have horrible royalty rates for music streaming in the U.S. And thanks to Tariff 8, your rates here are a tiny fraction. They're very reasonable. They're in the ballpark of what you pay for the sound recording here, the label and the band, is about what you pay for the composer, which is about right. And it makes it theoretically a very valuable business, I assume, to do music streaming up here. But not, as Alan Cross points out, not music podcasts. That's a different problem.
That is.
Well, let's go to questions. And I don't think we have any spare microphones, so you're just going to have to identify yourself and speak. Oh, that's a great way to do it. Identify yourself and you have a mic. Good.
Hi, my name's Doug Bingley, and I have a question for Zach. Wait, that didn't work out right.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Zach.
Here, Zach.
Oh, great. There we go.
Okay. Sorry.
What I've observed is we did some focus groups recently, and the older listeners were more involved with personality. The younger they got, the more it was just, it's all about the music. And it occurred to me that part of the problem is on the teen level, we used to have radio stations that targeted teenagers. We were training them in the genre, getting them used to announcers, turning announcers into stars, and it's like, wow, that's what we need. It sounds like you're what we need.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
What's your experience being in that? Is I mean, is that what we need? Is that what you're seeing? Is it?
It is, because I think radio needs to matter to young kids. You need to speak to them. And I always thought it was really weird and kind of ironic when I would hear a guy on the radio be an announcer, but he was like 55 years old and bald, and I was 13 years old riding in the van with my mom, right? He was not me by any means. Nobody was speaking to me. And it ties into the fact that like authenticity and being genuine is key now, right? Like Julie, your kids, they're most likely consuming a lot of vlogs, right? People vlog nowadays. It's a straight to camera thing where you just share your life. That's pretty much what my radio show is, but a group of friends hanging out. That honesty is needed, right? And the other thing too is if you listen to the show, my show, it's unlike any other night show out there. We're not fast talking ramps. I'm not a pukey, coming up at like 7:05. We got some tickets for you. None of that. Like, we make mistakes on the air. We have fun. We make jokes. We do bits, right? We have conversations that matter and that resonate. And when I go into markets, I can't even describe to you the feeling, right? I was just in Kansas City this past weekend, and I went to Worlds of Fun. It's a big amusement park there, and it funnels Kansas City and Columbia, Missouri right into it. I'm in both markets. One group of kids comes up to me, and then the whole rest of the day is shot because it's like 150 kids around me taking pictures. And they're all between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. That's the age. So like, kids are listening to radio. It's in their zone, right? Their parents have it in their car. It's on their preset. If somebody comes through that speaker and actually speaks to them, you will grab them, right? The ears are there. It's not like they're not there. It's not like they're not listening to the radio. You're just not telling them something to care about. You're not giving them a reason to be invested. You're not speaking to them pretty much at all. Telling them what time a contest is coming up, that's cool, right? But how do you maximize that? How do you actually build a legitimate, tangible relationship with people between the ages of 12 and 24 years old? Because them right there, that is the future of radio. That's how our industry continues to move forward. And that's how everybody in this room has a job 25, 30 years from now. So yeah, people don't connect with the personalities, younger kids, because the majority of the personalities out there, there's nothing to connect with. What is there to connect with a pukey radio DJ telling me to listen at 7:05? What relationship is there? What do I know about you? What do you want to know about me? It's like any other relationship. It doesn't form that way.
Good point.
Cool.
Let's go to anybody else. Let's see if we can have, yes, and we'll get you mic.
You want the microphone? Here it comes.
I'll go to you. Here. I got it.
Okay.
I'm too old to do that, Zach.
I need this, honestly.
He leaps over tables.
This is the most active I've been in too long.
We need the $6 Million Man sound effect.
My name is Christian from Montreal. I do represent the 35 community radio all over Quebec, a French podcast. And a month ago, I was in Amsterdam to the radio days. And they're crazy about the DAB, the digital audio broadcasting, and it's the impact of the radio over there. And well, we all know that the frequency of the DAB is used by the U.S. Army here in North America. So, Julie, my question is for you. You were speaking about technology agreement. Where are we going to go with the digital broadcast? Are we going to stay on FM like for years and years, or are we going to move over something?
It's a great question, and I don't have the answer, but we have to sort that out. We did have DAB transmitters, which, you know, early on, I think Canada was sort of, had to make a decision whether it was going to go HD like the US or go DAB like Europe. And I'm not sure we made the right choice. I don't know that we really had a choice, but we made the choice. And I remember when they came in and presented about DAB, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And I regret now not knowing what they were talking about then. So I don't know where it's going to go. Most of the DAB transmitters, I think, have all been turned off. We do have, and I frankly think our industry is a little too tight-lipped about the technology piece. I think we should be sharing that information. Rogers is in HD in Vancouver and in Toronto. We have one FM signal in each market carrying our AM properties. That's all we have planned to do right at the moment. And you know, I think as a broadcasting industry, we should be sharing that information and determining, you know, which way we want to go. My challenge with HD is, as of this minute, there are only 12% of cars on the road in the US, where it's been activated for many years. And I think 40% of the cars being sold right now are HD capable. So I don't know whether that's just going to take us, I don't know if you have a position on that, but I do think we have to figure it out.
No. I do know, we've discussed this morning, that listenership to the side channels, the HD2, HD3 channels, is virtually unmeasurable. Right. Because they would be picked up by PPM. They're encoded for that, and they're well below 0.1 shares almost everywhere. Is there a consumer benefit to the idea, do you need to go digital? Is that are there consumer?
Well, we did it for AM reasons, right? So the AM stations sound much better on FM. That's a way to go, genius.
I think one of the challenges that we had in Canada, and there was a lot of really smart people and smart broadcasters that, you know, participated in trying to get DAB, you know, to follow the trajectory that it was on in the UK. One of the challenges, though, was our main selling proposition is you get your radio in near CD quality sound. And, you know, it's funny now in an MP3 world because everybody already thought they were getting CD quality sound on their FM. So we were going out to market with a premise for receivers that were really expensive. And we weren't offering anything new. At least with HD, there's the opportunity to kind of, you know, offer different content within that. And I don't even know, like, I know DAB is a factor in Europe, but my understanding is the rate of adoption's really slowed down. And I think, you know, I agree with Mark that I think we're moving to a bot world. And, you know, when I look at where radio's access, you know, more and more connected cars are going to be in the marketplace. They're going to reach critical mass in about 2020. I just think the delivery system has changed so much that I don't know if DAB or HD is really an answer for us.
That's right. Well, internet into the car, leapfrog, digital, DAB or HD into the car, I guess that's the question.
Well, we're certainly not seeing anything with our, I don't know what we're seeing with our HD properties in Toronto and Vancouver. There's nothing that really shows us whether it's good or bad other than the obvious quality piece. So this might be a bit of a wait and see.
I think for us it would be a matter of what is the benefit? What's the benefit to the consumer? Why are they going to be, you know, compelled to purchase, say, an HD receiver? What can we offer them that's different? Is it artwork? Is it an enhanced experience or anything like that? If the consumer's not looking for that, or they can get it through their smartphone that's plugged into their car or like a hybrid device, that's more likely where we're going to pivot and shift to.
Okay, I think we have maybe 1 minute left, if my watch is correct. My connected watch is correct. So if you think you have a really good question that deserves to be the last question of the day, and we can do it in a minute, raise your hand.
No pressure.
Yeah. Right. We have a winner. A potential winner.
Oh, I'm glad you do, because I really want to know the answer to this question. When I stream radio on an average workday, it uses up about 1/3 of a gig. So I became really curious about why we don't get AM and FM on our phones, because I understand that the technology is on the phone, but they're not unlocked. And is there any plan in place now to have radio available actually as radio on our phones?
So first of all, I think it's a misnomer that the technology is already on the phones. It's actually a small percentage of handsets that have the FM chip there. So we know the Next Radio people have been up, as a company, we're really supportive of that. There's obviously benefits. One of the key ones being, in the case of an emergency, FM is one of the, foolproof ways that we could get information out to a community. So we've thrown it to our mobility team, and our mobility teams come back to us saying, listen, we're open to this, but it's not about us. First of all, the software is in a small percentage of the handsets in the marketplace. Second of all, this is an OEM level conversation, because it isn't about us not wanting to turn these on, because what I kept hearing was, well, wireless companies don't want to turn them on because they're going to lose all that data through it. I think radio streaming is a pretty small piece of that overall data pie, and the indication that I'm getting from my mobility team is we're all supportive, but it's not on our lap to turn on the FM tuner into Samsung's handsets. It's up to Nokia and Samsung and whoever else, to be able to ignite that. So, the Next Radio folks, I assume, are kind of working that fight. And I think as broadcasters, we're all pretty supportive about that, because it's almost to the argument of which platform are you going to be on? And I believe you should be on as many platforms as possible. Like, we don't feel like if you're on iHeartRadio and Radio Player that there's an issue with that, because ultimately you each have brands and you need to build audiences with them, and it behooves you to do that everywhere your audience is. And I feel the same way about the FM chip in phones.
Same. It's the same. I mean, we've had the guys up. They met with the president of Wireless for Rogers. He said, hey, if radio wants to do this, I'm supportive. But there aren't enough phones. It's not in any Apple product, so you immediately lose 50% of the market right there. And the other products that it's in is small. There's only so much time in a day, right? So there are only so many fights you can take on at once. So right. I think if it turns out that the FM chip is, activated in a whole bunch of phones, I'm pretty confident we'll be able to get our carriers on board to do that.
Although I have one follow-up question. The third of a gig or half a gig you use, were you in a location where you had Wi-Fi?
No, that was, no.
So when you,
Liz streams a lot of porn.
Me too, I get it.
But Liz, that's when you're traveling and in a car, et cetera, et cetera.
You should end on that, buddy. That's the last.
Thanks to a great panel. Big round of applause.